I wanted to say something like this. We discussed a shtickle, the Shale, and through Tuesday in the Yiddish year, we discussed more with the philosophy of the Shale, which has to do with, I'm focusing on Tshuva, but it's really a question about everything. And kind of looking a lot of Putin probably. But the basic question would be in the context of Yemei Tshuva, the question and I found by Yaakov Anatoli, the Melamed Talmidim, I'll talk about it in a minute. Mamish like put on the Shala, so wie es the Kedlushin azeh. The Mushal, if it says Kri'i b'yoi sekure, when we looked as Aseres machiva, you should do Tshuva because God is close to you. So there's really two very contradictory accounts of this kind of thing. One is God is close because you do Tshuva, and the second one is you do Tshuva because God is close, right? So what comes before? Is there some real difference in the time? I called it whether an objective it exists and the time is different, or it's not God, but it's not the reality. Or it's just all, everything starts from the human being, so it's sort of subjective. I don't know if subjective is the exact correct word, but we're using this terminology for a second. Right, so that's the big question. That's how he puts it down, the question. And Shine. So of course I talked on Tuesday, a very nice Mekar, because of course the same question is about Kedushas Mukim, not only Kedushas Man. Interestingly, Kedushas Man seems in the way that we Chassidishes for him and still maybe Kabulim talk about it. I don't find anyone I told you there's the Bisl Mamish. It doesn't seem to be a big concern on the Zman Rishayim, the people that we're studying most of the time. They don't seem to be concerned. They do seem to be a little concerned about Kedushas Mukim, because obviously Beis Hamikdash, and this is a concern. This is a thing that it's Pshat HaChimish tight. There's heilige Plätze nicht auf Mainz, and that it doesn't say in the Pshat HaChimish Kedushas Man. There's this one man like about the Aseres Machiva that we're discussing. Maybe Rishonim, Kippur, these three. This is more or less everything you get. That's what we also discussed a little bit more Barichas last time, right? From all the Me'adim, we don't get to really Kedushas Man, because Me'adim are just, we're celebrating they went out of Mitzrayim. Even Shabbos, it doesn't say that Shabbos is heilig. It says Ve'kadosh Yemei Shvi. And it's not saying that God is there, does something different to you on Shabbat, something like that. It's not the pshat. Nobody really seemed to think. All the Mefarshim are worried, and then Parshas Bereishis was mind pinklich ve'kadosh ve'vurech. They all have pshutim, but none of them really say that it just means kepshita. God is somehow more present in Shabbos. It's fakir. And then ve'kadosh, and what does it mean? He made it into a Yom Kodesh. Gedenken. So you should remember Kish Hashem. That's what it says. Mamash in the Lichas Shnias. It doesn't really say that. And therefore, every Shabbos is a holier day than by itself. It doesn't seem to say that I'll be pshat, and of course not from Pesach and Shvius and Sikkos. The only place where you might find it is again in Rosh Yom Kippur, Aseres Machiva, as conceptualized by the word Aseres Machiva, as it's like a time, a Yemei Shiva. Of course, Rosh Hashanah has the dins, which also connected this. Yom Kippur has Slicha, and again, at pshat, it doesn't seem that the day is something interesting. Of course, the other way is also schwer in the Rishonim way of thinking, but the Chimish doesn't say that the 10th day of Tishrei is special. It says that on the day that you do all these avodas, the avodas mechaper, that's Pshat Chimish, that avodas and mikbirim is mechaper, but does not the Yom. The Chachomim actually did say that it's Tzimish mechaper because they found themselves without avodah, and they sort of said that im kolzeh, the Tzimish Yom. So there you start having something where the day is interesting, but we don't really have that in the Pshat. For some reason it's not a thing. I don't know, I keep on always ask this question in a lot of different contexts. This idea of Ma'adim and being very important, let's say important for Avodah Hashem, not important Stam als mitzvah b'saida, is seems to be a recent thing for the most part. Recent meaning a few hundred years old.
It's essentially different.
That's the theology, but even practically, another way of saying the same question is if you look in like modern science, anyone that's interested in Ashkofe and Machshove, Chassidus, Chayzvos, you can have a krach ala me'adim, every Saifa. This is a very new thing. You could find the first Saifa ala me'adim. I don't know what it is. I have my thoughts about this. But there's no Chatisha Ritva ala me'adim, okay? Of course not, because it's halacha. There's also not Saifa Azoyer ala me'adim. Of course you could be malakit, but doesn't organize himself that way. There's no Ram. There's Arizal. Yes, Arizal has a lot of kavanas. He seems to start it in some way. There's some Sifre Drish before him. Yes, the Shar Kavunas. But so that's where it starts. That's not a lot before. In other words, And people not that pshat, people didn't care about these things. They talked about all of these things, but they just didn't seem to organize things in the way that we seem to put a lot of emphasis on the times. Zman HaKadosh. I think it's a very good question. What does this mean? Yes, almost, in some sense. Also, by the way, even Chassidus, so you're right that the reason half of Shara Kavonis is Kavonis Me'adim. The Chassidus in the first generation is not, you see? It's only the second or third generation of Chassidus Sforim that care about Me'adim. No, the Malach, the Lowy, Baal Shem Tov Magid, this first generation, they sort of, Me'adim is just another way of, if there's a drish, it's not Nachal Zuk Nachal Delselbe drish, Zuk the Ganze. It's not Oisek. A little bit of Kaddish Lowy starts, and there's Kaddishas and stuff, but doesn't seem to be very focused on the Me'adim in the way that the later Sforim, like, seem to be focused on. You don't see the Moranayim doesn't seem to care about Me'adim too much. At least this cipher is not all silent. It might be talks about them, but just noch a pusik that he has to explain, and noch a shtickle teure, but it's not a thing actually in the beginning of Chassidus. It actually happens much more. And Bedor Azai, I think Moshe Wolfson is shilting of his. Someone like him. Maybe this was Sam as the Shem Shmiel, these people, that their tradition. Chabad is not about Me'adim. No, only recently. Maybe in practice, but not in this forum. The Kita Torah doesn't talk about Me'adim too much. Yes, but you see, but it's the other way around. But that's recently. The last Rebbe was very much this kind of Baldra. No, I don't think so. I think that for him it's just because the Shuna. I think that to him it's practical. I don't think so. I think that for him it's very practical. For him he needs some time to be Oisek and Chassidus and Oilem Arbetach, and maybe they force the Rebbe Yom Tov, so that's when he gives a lot of drushes on Yom Tov. But his drushes don't. They don't ask the question, what's the inyan of Yom Gimel? Like the Lubavitcher Rebbe, last Rebbe is very a lot of this kind of Amurim and Shmizn. He doesn't really care about that. It's always a drish to get to his point, and the point is the same whole year, more or less. It's not, he doesn't talk about the Ures HaMe'adim or something like that too much. Maybe he talks about it, but it's not his pain. He doesn't seem to center it. There is, and in the Mittler Rebbe, and Nagdumas of one his Sfurim says that maybe in Shari Oiri even on the Shuna and Piram was it Shari. The Mittler Rebbe does have Sfurim on Me'adim, and it seems like he writes in the Nagdumah. I think of Shari Oiri, one of them, that the reason he's doing it is because Me'adim is as man, as Mekirah, people have more open heart, and they could start thinking about things. So he's giving them but even then, it's not that his cipher is not Inyan Uris and Me'adim. His cipher is Inyan Chassidus. This base starts somewhere with the Brahmas of the Yom Tov, and he's writing it. So you should. They transcend. Right. So they're somewhat yeah. They don't even need to come up to. They barely see the Shabbos. Right. They use it for their own thing. They're not interested in the and they even try. Even the Siddur, like the Mittler Rebbe is like the of the Siddur says that the Olam wants to think Chassidus by davening, but Shaykh the Chassidus with the Siddur. So Yitzchok Shem took together shticklich that have something to do with the. No, it's Taka. It seems to have been studied. The Alter Rebbe learned it outside that filler. I don't know exactly. The Mamurim over there, they do go through. Some of them, there's like shticklich that go through the whole Psik Zimra and so on. And the Siddur, im Dach, the reason for that Siddur existing is so that the Olam should daven and should at least it has a connection to the Siddur. And is it work? And then there's also has a Chaylik on Me'adim over there. He does care about that. Okay, in the Rishonim we don't find this almost at all. Abyssal. Maybe just because we don't have those Sfurim, there's not really a lot of Sifra Drish and Drushes Vedishim. I think that in Medrash there is a little of this, so maybe a lot of this. Psikta is basically Sefer al Me'adim, or special Shabbosim, it is. But the Yeshla and how they see it. Back to where am I about this? Where am I about this? Yeah, so what I was saying is that this doesn't seem to be very concerned about the times. That there is, maybe there is, but I do have the sources after learning all these sources. There is some conceptual, but not centered as you would have wanted to be centered. But El Gabe Kedesh Smokim, for example, and this is not mefirish either. But it seems like what do I want to say? What I want to say, one of the things is like this: that if you look in the Chumash, in Parshas Vayayitza, is the biggest mekar that came to my mind. That Kedesh Smokim is not. It's not And so there's again, we could say the same two accounts about Mokim, right? We could say Beis Mikdash is heilig because we do kabunas, they do avodas there, so that's the holy place. That's one place, and that's the way of reading it. Or we could say the other way around, because this is a Mokim Kudesh, Mokim Shel Shros HaShechina. Therefore, we're Rui lechabdoi and to make it into a Beis Mikdash and do kabunas in the right place, right? Now, nafkamina, one big nafkamina would be Lemushal, if it's possible and. I will actually ask if this nafkamina is always true, because I have second thoughts about this. But the basic, we say, l'may nafkamina, chaltz deretish, l'may nafkamina. Nafkamina is very simple. If you pass by the Beis HaMikdash and you don't do avodah, do you have anything? Does it work without achuna? Another way, does it work without avodah? If you say that Aseres Matshiva is just, of course, land is better than Aseres Matshiva, so that's called the Yosek. Then, if you ignore Aseres Matshiva, then it's Gonesh. It's not Kabi Yosekurev, right? Same thing if you ignore the Beis HaMikdash, it's not. Now in Parashat Vayetza, there's literally this story. There was a Yid, it's called Yaakov, that he went to sleep in some area, in Beisail actually, not in Halpipshat, but not in Yerushalayim, but in Beisail. He went to sleep, and he had a dream, he had a vision of God in his dream, and he woke up and he said, why did this happen? Must be that this is a Mokim Kudesh. Ein Zeki in Beselim, v'zeh Shara Shemaim. So in Pshat HaChimesh, and one of the morals of this story.
When you read this, like how it's like you're reading a Kabbalah,
Yes. No, but it seems like a Pip Pshat. There's locations in the world, which are the gate to heaven, whatever. It's al pipshat, and he found this, he discovered it. In other words, this is a story that's trying to explain how there's a lot of stories in Sefer Braysh al pipshat about this, or at least this is one of the lemidim. How did we get a Mokim Kodesh? How did we discover a Mokim Kodesh? Yaakov discovered it, and it's a discovery. It's not he didn't create it, he discovered it. So guy does the Rambam, I'll tell you what the Rambam did with this pusik, and then you'll talk to me. Because I actually found out what the Ram does with this pusik. But the Kpinim Pshata pusik is that Yaakov discovered the Mokim Kudesh. Now this is the only Shara Shemaim. Maybe there's more. Maybe the Baal Lecharo is Ochtaplatz, some other places. Maybe then and so on. Maybe in the Melech Suah Malach and the Goyren Anan. So we have line all these. But a lot of it is like this is what was discovered. What wasn't created, it was discovered. And it was discovered by Mikra. Nish Yaakov had sich misbeutert gewesen, he could even save that, and then it became a Kodesh. No, he paying in Faket after he realized that he had a gilly, so he saw, must have been that this is a Gita Mukim Mechshel. That's the Mamish Pshata Pusik. The master, there are psikim, just once we're on the subject of the Bible. In the Bible, there are psikim that literally seem to say the opposite. And of course, this is a big controversy from the times of the Tanakh until today, how it's Mokim Kedoshim is literally one of the biggest politics, not politics, but the biggest controversies in Tanakh, which of course is Sefer Dvurim, busy with the Mokim Asher Yivchar, and so on. And Sefer Dvurim seems to have a shitta about this, but the Mushal in Sefer Shemos, it says literally the opposite of this. Right? Ki idea that Sefer Shemos, that pusik is a größer Shalom. And Shtata Pusik, in the end of Aseres at the Bris, and then when God revealed himself to the Yidden in Har Sinai, at the end it says, and next week where you're going to find me, it says, Azai, B'chol Mokim, Mamish, this is the, Loisas Nitil Haiches, if don't do, B'chol Mokim Asher, Mizbay Chavurim Tasli, B'chol Mokim Asher Askres Shemir, V'lecha V'reticha. Literally says, not looking for a lot of gold and silver, I'm a push to God, whatever, maybe I'm mifshe to God, whatever it means. Darf nicht kein größer golden and silver, but doesn't mean God, right? It means tasnli, right? Don't make me some idols of gold and silver. Just make me a small mizbayach out of avunim, and wherever you make it, I'll come. It seems to say, and this is not the only pusik that says this. The whole idea of the Mishkan is basically against Ketishas Mokum. It's portable. And even the Sefer Dvurim that has a Mokum Asher Yivcha doesn't name the place. So this seems to be a third thing. He seems to say, and how do you know what Yivcha? Basically, wherever it is, that's where Yivcha. It's very funny kind of pusik. Tzadvun has a lot of these things. Like, Busela, Novi, how do you know if he's the Novi? If he's the Novi, but in other words, he's very on like the free will of God. God could decide to be wherever he wants. It's not like there's some Mareiches HaShemayim, he has to go in the Shar HaShemayim. Mukim HaShayivcha, and maybe he might change his mind. Could be that Busel Menichal Anachla, now he has but at least theoretically, the Mokum HaMikdash al Pi Sefer Dubna is not holy because of Rum when he went there. Because God decided this week to be here. And is it Kedit Shalusid Lova? It's really a question for post-Biblit, Machlek Tanum, literally. Man, it's not like it's so simple that it's forever there. At least from the Zman, Eser Abumas, whenever that is. So it's, for now, this is Mokum HaShebuchar, but it's not a set thing. So that's really a third Yeshline what this means, this shit. Okay, so back to, I was just saying that there isn't Chimish, these two movements. There is like Sefer Bereshis has these stories of, we discovered Makom Kedoshim. Sefer Shemos seems to have very deliberately, you could make any place you want holy. Maybe there's Dina, maybe that's to be Mizbach Hadun, maybe the Mishkan, but the whole Mishkan is basically... Talk about this, why isn't it? Depends which Mefarshim you're talking about. The Shale, if it says Askir or it means Tazkir, the Gris, Hatztima Deichkir. Kapunim, the critics say that it's Tzurich Lei Metazkir, but doesn't make a difference. I don't think, I think it means the same thing, both. Kapunim, but I do think that the Mishkan, the whole idea is that if Shchanti Besoichem, and Nish Be Alidai is a Mukim, it's portable. We could make a Mishkan wherever you want. V'kachaver, made Mishkan Shila, Mishkan Disam. Doesn't seem to be, the Shale, Visser Abuma, is beside this Tuli and Deichkira, but it's, okay. Kapunim, that seems to be the story about Kedish's Mukim. Kedish's man does not have any, see again, interestingly, maybe you could talk about Shabbos if you want to read it in a more mythical, a more that God no Kaddish Oisem, Kaddish gonna say Mashvi. Adam don't have any Kaddish Oisem story to them at all. They literally says Me'adei Hashem Mikroi Kodesh Asher Tikri Oisem, when Chazal of course said Asher Tikri Oisem Ata V'Felishagim, but it's in the Pusik. We make them Adam. Now why do we make them on this day? Because but it doesn't say ever Mikivan she like it does seem to say b'mukim. Kivan she'izgala Hashem b'Mitzrayim b'yom zeh nasa chok that nizgalish it's a day of izgalis. We don't really have this kind of thing in Pshat Tanakh, and also not in Chazal that I remember. The Mekbulim will definitely say this, but I don't know that it's. So therefore, Kedushas Mukim is probably a better place to check this question if there are things, if there's some order and things that either God does it arbitrarily or there's some structure like Bereichas Hashemayim. Or it's just all alidai avoida or subjective. And the Rambam, very fair, of course, this story, it's very interesting. I just realized this Shabbos because I was preparing my Shira and the Moira. And the Rambam, this story of Yaakov in his Chulam literally takes as the template for his whole idea of how to be Masik God. Because of course the Silam of Yaakov Avini literally means the ladder of Hasuga, which you go from one proof to another proof, or from one reality to another reality as a cosmology, and goes through the Oilimus, however exactly you want to see it. He literally sees Silam Yaakov as the image in which his whole Saifa fits in a certain sense. He mentions it in the Agduma and a few times inside the Saifa, and he doesn't elaborate on the Shulam Kedarke, but he sees this, and he literally says that Mokem is like a Pshita. The first Peirik Ches and Mo'er is a Peirik about Binyan Shem Mokem, because he has this dictionary of Mokem. Mokem meint nicht Pshita. Mokem means Mokem Ian. That's the Rambam's translation. Mokem means a kitzur akasha, a raya, an idea. It's like beferish, and Mefarshim all don't know exactly which Mokem he's talking about. Maybe this is a parish on Gan Eden. Maybe this is a parish. It says beferish, it's a parish on Hina Mokem Iti, v'samtichu v'nikras tatzir. It's again, seems to be that Hasina, wherever that is, a Mokem. No, it's like the Rambam. It's also mushel. If it happened or not, it's not a question that he's worried about. But it's an Alza Mushel, and Mukim just means have a concept for you. Because of course God isn't in a place and so on. So and then he talks about this Silam Yaakov. So it seems like the Rambam would literally see that all this is a Mushel. And in other words, Alpi Emes, maybe there's also Mukim HaMikdash and Shmakrish, the Ikke Pshat of this story is that it's all a Mushel to explain you how to be Masay God. And the place where Vayishkva Mukim Ahi, Shtatoch Mukim, is obviously means whichever Mukim, the same Mukim that Moshe Rabbani was, which means basically Masay Bereshis, according to him, Kitzah to be born in the Galgalim, how they turn, and you'll figure out that there's a God. That's basic, the most caricature vision idea of that. And he literally says, and of course the Rambam does say in Chayla Gimel why there's Mokim HaMikdash, and his theory is basically that it's because of the Zura made the Lafikas, and the Getchke and stuff in Barak, so he made such kind of pshutim, he says. And maybe because of Ravini made that Kaida, but all he seems to really think that Mokim is a Mushal. And he would definitely say that about Zman if you would ask him. I don't think he says it, but I'm pretty sure that he would. Showing that was my comment about the story of Yaakov Avinu. So now we have these Manei Tshuva. So I wanted to show how the Rambam's Chassidim, and the Rambam, we discussed this a little, right? The Rambam himself doesn't ever go through all the Makoros and explain them in his way. It just lets you think by yourself. But his Chassidim definitely do. And they talk about this Bariches, and I wanted to learn about this a little bit and what we could learn from this. So first cipher is that I brought it very much Bariches here, which is the cipher Melamed Talmidim. And Melamed Talmidim was written by Rabbi Yaakov Anatoli, which was the item of Reb Shmuel ben Tibon. So very miches in Rambamism. So the one Noitzrach Achma, wherever. There's the text, I think, in Barilan. That's where I got it from. And the cipher, of course, it was popular actually in their times. The Meiri quotes it a lot, and he talks about it and bases things on it also. And people around that area, it was not printed until like the kids in the Dumim, some Maskel was figured out that it's printed. But it's actually very nice cipher drish. Outside it's very small cipher. It's like one drish on each parsha, and he's marich and the emes the pshat von asach Sachen. Very frimme cipher also. Ich kann stark äußern. His big thing. It's very interesting because you see how, at least how he understood things. His big thing is that me learn Teure and me darf this cipher. No, how come it's not opening? And me darf lernen bepnimius. That's his big hack. Sorry. His big hack is as jeder eine lernt der Parsche, but keine trachten Sharan in dem, ich kann avoid the Shebelev. Basically, Choyves Salvus Sheberambam. And in order to do that, he's marich in a lot of things to explain what they actually mean. Of course, he has some Rambamistische. So that asking me for Shlemek Liga, das Kille Machmadim, Mr. Haskell, and he quoted that the Friediger brought it. So, it's not a Hechshe from Shlemek Liga. Okay. Gapunim, interesting.
Yeah, well, who's...
It's true, it's a Stake Mula Mr. Yeah, but no. Stake Mula Mr. Haskell, Viris Hashem.
Who's there?
Weiß nicht. Kids not was like half frames, nicht, they were not such a because in all of them. Yes, no. These two they were the vada that to get geld or whatever. Moshe Mantifon is Chapshim was guy before. This is the money board. I don't know exactly what the story of these kids never do. I say heimish, ich meine, es gonna say yeshiren chevra, weißt? He's marich very much in this Indian, and here's what he has to say about the Aseres Tshuva, about I cut out some pieces because I wanted to focus on some things, and I copied it Bariches over here, if I could find it. Gets Ramase, eine guy darf es überdrücken, someone would be a nice cipher. He writes this beautiful drish in Parshas Nitzuvim. From Pusik, Ashrei Amir Desrio, it's nothing to add. It's a bisschen Parshas Nitzuvim, mostly about Rosh Hashanah. And macht gesagt, Tshuva Ashrei. See the erste Pusik in Tehillim, Ashrei Yeshe Shlilich Basas Reshuim, and this gives him an opportunity to hack around into the whole, that is the Shuim and the Chatuim and lights him and all kinds of Reshuim, Tzadikim, Bain and Reshuim. One of the interesting things that he says over there is basically the only thing Leina 90. Stam, the guy Tzadach makes a very nice reads the parsha into Tehillim. This is the thing with the Rishonim. Whenever they say a drish, they don't. Nachdem my father the ganze Kapitel, and now you have to get back to where he's up to. And it says that this is Leitzim. Leitzim is someone that doesn't have Seichel. But nicht kann Avari, nicht kann Rusha, because then it would be a Rusha or a Chatuim. That's Rusha is Rishim Geminim, Chatuim is Shagim, he says, Beinanim Kelly. And lights are people that learn in, but they nicht can eins dimension, so they don't do that with this Choyves Alvus. And it's like you see, ein Benaim Divre Teure, des am Moish of Leitzim. Kelly, nicht so das ist an Aveire. Aveire would be schrecklich. But a Leitz is someone that nicht gar nicht schlecht, but it auch nicht gar nicht geht, especially. Dit alle geht in Schiel, dit alles, and he says that this is, I do the chsiv, what Ruve said that Ruve, ich weiß, Chuchum Tamid, like there's a Tarti Gehenim, right, remember? I think it's a Rova. Two Gehenim. What's two Gehenim? Two Gehenim is hast nicht Oilem Haze, nicht Oilem Habe. And according to him, that means du bist a fremde Yid, was hat nicht kein Pnimis. So stam last of the Welt, because he can't eat cheeseburgers. And can Ganaiden kannst du auch nicht. Das weiß der Lamm ist shoot. So gibt's auch so schleule Schma. That's also what Tarte Gehenim mean.
What was the story? Was it say there about what?
Lass mal sehen. Let's say Tarte Gehenim. Rova hat gesagt für seinen Talmidem, Yemei in Beis und mit Beis. Ist Rova. Yeah, he's talking about Tam Choch Mish Einer Yiris Shemaim. Same thing, same idea. Pinklich mamish, like he's a very good darshan. He puts things, he takes things that almost mean what he wants them to mean and makes them, yeah. Okay, so this is the Inyan from the lights and Bekitzev, therefore you should, you have to do there, and therefore especially you have to learn at night. He's very, like this reminds me a lot of things that the Zohar is very obsessed with. There's a small Ganaiden if you learn at night. So if you learn Gemura, I have no idea what he's talking about. Glory, I don't know about which pusik.
Glory.
Yeah, but Shaykhs, I'm not sure what is going on here. So he says, what's the kovod? Kovod is the glory that's a small Ganaiden that you get when you learn at night. But yeah, that's also a pusik. The Rambam was very, very, very much set on the Rambam was very interested in this pusik. Imri b'vavchem al mishkavchem. He seems to understand that as Tamina avoid penimis, because that's Imri b'vavchem. V'doi miselu. You don't have to speak, because loydem yotelu. And he's also very. So you see all these remuzim that the Rambam did. These Talmidim, they very much opened the drish on the pusik. And so this is Zan Zach and Shaim Daf Lein Banach. Look on the Shuim Shaim. And then he goes to. This is really where I started, more or less. I think Shvius was gebringt in this. Ich meine, als gewoon kommen zu do. Noch, we'll kick in a second. Now a little further, okay. And then this he explains is the inyan of the Shlosh Sfurim, which is basically, and he has this shtickle about why the binary has to do Tshuva, which kind of mad the very famous kasha, why Lowy Zocha, Kitzer, and that Tshuva, and he talks about what's the Chaim. This is all not our subject so much, but of course he's worried about this kasha. This is Tam, but this is not the Team, it was equal and will wissen wegen. I want to get to this Nikida. What do I want to say? No, I think I skipped it over there. He claims that Chaim doesn't mean Chaim, it means Avodas Hashem, Tzadikim Mesusam Kriyem Chaim. This is like this is the Ramban's shit. It's not Ramban's shit. I'm trying to remember whose shit. This has to do with the whole machlokas about the Shlosh Sfurim Neftochim B'Rosh Hashanah. Yeah, but Toysus doesn't say that it means. Okay, I have to remember. So Toysus the Ramban does something different. Right. So there's two pshat. One's Tzadikim Medina, and one's the Medina means the Reshuim, because that's Tzadikim Medina. According to the Ramban, it's upside down. Tzadikim means the Reshuim, and Tzadrom means Tzadikim, because they get schar. He literally said this, because they get schar boilem haze, and they get oynish boilem haze. The Ramban said he noticed. He said that no, for that we have that's true that Chaim doesn't only mean life. It means also Refiya and Panus and whatever. It's kein problem. But he says that Chaim Beika means this, and therefore when we say Zochrayin L'Chaim, we really mean, but this is important for him. I'll tell you why. We really mean, let me do Tshuva. If I was Beitster, I was even Beit of Tshuva. Yeah, different. He has already a whole another level of Torah about this. But to him, Zochrayin L'Chaim means to do Lo Mechtin Tshuva. I was daven stuff Tin Tshuva, and if I was daven on Tshuva the whole time. This has to do but with the whole Ma'apaich that Rambam did, and he's very explicit about this, that really when we say, in other words, let's try to, I think, he almost says it openly, but I think that, where did I somewhere I quoted where he says this beferish. In other words, the Rosh Hashanah, the Yemei from Rosh Hashanah comes from doing Tshuva. Just like we say the question, does it say this my Tshuva, does it start by Yosef Kurva, does it start Kurui, right? Does your Tshuva cause it to be a Seres Matshiva, does Seres Matshiva make you do Tshuva? Same, in a similar way we could talk about do we have to do Tshuva on Rosh Hashanah because it's Yom Adin, or do we say that it's Yom Adin, so you should do Tshuva? And he's more or less on the side that we say it's Yom Adin, and Zekurin of the Shofim basically means you should do Tshuva. Alles meint, he says it in the end, you'll see, he says very fair when he talks about Malchus Chrenschaf. I think he has a nice prat about Malchus Chrenschaf, so I'll get to it. So, but this is the, no, that's only so, the Mushal Svois Furim Meftochim, yeah, it's actually not so bad. So I saw someone working on it, looks like, I have to ask him if he's talking giving it out. Upside in Flatbush, in Tradition, what's the journal called? Tradition? Chakira Journal. Chakira Journal, he, who? Yeah. Yeah. So I have to ask him. Chakira Journal had someone published a few mamurim from it, like Metauras and stuff, and he wrote about. So I'm assuming that guy wants to publish. Maybe we should call him and tell him he should. Gets it.
In English,
No, in both. He wrote some also in Shinkodesh. It's very nice drish. Actually, you should read the whole thing. But I want to get to my thing. So that's his whole shot of Tzadikim Bain Rishum, and of course the Sfurim meint nicht gibt nicht Kaseife, just means da habe ich dir gedenkt, das der Muschel. And Va'achas name is nur tum kein Rishun, shayim noid bei Yisrael. He keeps on saying, because Yidden say that Rishuna, the Sfurim Leftochen is merely means always, but kitze. This is all a way to get you to do Tshuva, but kitze. There's also the Rambam says, it's very openly, you realize that the Rambam, when he's going to quote the Rambam, when the Rambam said that Kiyas Shoiva B'Rishuna Tamiyash B'Lo'ires Alev, I already talked last time that the Rambam is doing the opposite of the Pshat, because Pshat Toif is about waking up God, and he makes it about waking up you. But it's really even another level of this. We see that in the next Rambam, in the Paida Gimel, where he talks about the Din. Because Pshat, let's even say that Shoiva is Lo'ire L'Tshiva. For what's that from B'Rishuna and Lo'ire L'Tshiva? Because Rishuna is a Yemei Din, and otherwise you're going to die. That's how normal people understand it, right? And the Rambam seems to understand it in the opposite way. You have to do Tshuva, and that's why we, and I was thinking, even the Rambam, exactly, and that's why the Shoifa and the Zechur and the Din, all these things, then they're another, Nacha Shoifa to get you to do Tshuva. And I think even when the Rambam says, remember this in the language, what is going on here? You think that's a shtickle? You have the Rambam. What's the Inyan? In other words, you thought that you're schnell chapping around some mitzvahs because to save the matzah, because it's a Yom Aden. Nein. The heißt, was mit der ganze Sache? Because you have no ways to do Tshuva. And we found the time to make you do Tshuva, and that's why what you're doing is really doing Tshuva. You're not doing being Moisef Zechias. Moisef Zechias is just a way to do Tshuva because Yiratz Mechatzi Zake, which is another fancy way of saying do Tshuva, and so on.
Yeah, but even in the stam the regular simple.
No.
Once Rosh Hashanah passes, there is a kind of like more of a focus on Tshuva than the Din part. In Kippur people aren't
because there's Kapura, because other things, but side, but that's taka funny. I think that it didn't used to be like this. That's Nahant. Maybe it's the modern. Right, the same thing. In other words, do we have to do Tshuva because God's going to punish us? So God punishes us, so we should do Tshuva.
Right, yeah. So I think you have to do is like, what's a shuna? Shuna is a very big.
I hear, but it's beside it, but that taka stems.
What's that? And once it starts, it's my Tshuva.
But that taka stems, because this whole pachad was to wake you up.
Yeah, okay.
And then you could do taka Tshuva. It's a stem taka with the idea of the shofar. So the shofar is not like a chruz, and now do Tshuva. Everything is okay. So now here's where we get. I want to talk about. So he talks about the shofar and everything. That's what I'm. So this whole drusha started with the pusik Ashrei Yemei Desriu. Yeah, of course, this is the greatest Ashrei. So it was not Kenem blues. So his idea is what he calls Ha'ura Satari. This is literally the Chosalov's language, right? So this Yid was learned Chosalov's. Right? The Chosalov's talks about, and interestingly, I wanted to say, the Chosalov's writes a whole shot about Tshuva and doesn't mention the Shtanish that going to say this in my Tshuva. Which is, I think it's a Shmut, Mesiga Shmut, is Yesh Lilmud Mehem. Like, you write a whole, and he even has a shar, a Peirik in Peirik Vuvin, Shar at Tshuva, Chosalov's, if I'm of his others to Tshuva, right? So he says, if you stam you, and or you had a tzura, they list of 4 different things which can be mo'iri to Tshuva, and none of them is that you heard a shofar, a shona. Like, lafika, lemushal. Yeah, the Bush Labani Yoin has the same kind of list. They all have the same structure of Sadiq. Like, you have to do Tshuva, but there's different ways of Imas or the Meiri and the Saifa that I want to talk about. And then one of them is Zmanai Tshuva. And the Chavos doesn't. The Rambam somehow, he also adds, and he doesn't. He just Tshuva is a ganzi. What's the... yeah. So the Chosov is a very mifshedig cipher in that sense. He wouldn't catch him by mistake saying, never gonna happen. So that's what he says. So because Ruth Hashem said, this is the Rambam's Ma'am Chazal, right? He's Mamish Rambam Merchev, this yid. Right? Ruth Gesproch Lizak Sesrol, if he Chibim Toidem, it's just everyone knows that the Rambam explained this Pusik in Perish Mishnayos a few times. That this means, in other words, he reads that Lizak Sesrol is what you really need to get to. In other words, Lo'ilem Habu. In other words, La Sugas Sichlias Shleimus.
Their whole idea of this of Yom Adin, people that are into the gift, they're very into being mistabek and meskulas.
No.
They don't. This Yom Adin has.
No, but that's why he said that Chaim means the same thing as doing Tshuva.
Yeah, so it's all part of this.
And the reason. So because the Welt als Lazakas is Israel, in other words, to make them do Tshuva and to Bekitza to do Tshuva. Meile, the Kloris Amtom, last of Lash Amato, although, so this is going back to his Pshetel about Derech Hatum Le'umad, right? So he says in a nice touch, Ash, no is the guy this, Asherish Lulach Basash Shrum, Derech Hatum Le'umad, the Bush Velites in Yusha, right? So there's 3 levels and 3 different actions, right? This is Hula. So he quotes the Gemara's Medrash that, but he says he thinks that the Pshat is that, like he said, the Shuam is a Shuam Gemirem. So B'derech Shuam, gar nicht B'derech Shuam. Then there's Chatuim. Chatuim means mistakes. So B'derech everyone makes mistakes. Although ein Tzadek Buretz Asher Asa Toiv Lo Yechtu. Das ist actually ein Tzadek Buretz Asher Lo Yerusha. Nicht kein Rusha, but Yechtu, es macht sich. At least Lo Omad. Stell dich schon weg. Go vor Vater. So that's the Ikrat, he sees that the Ikrat, like most of the Uras Lachiv are basically for this Chatuim. Not for the Rishuam. Rishuam and Nachtumen, that's really goes back to the Gemura. And it's actually very useful, right? The Rishuam are their lost case. Nachtumen Lamis, I get to talk with Lichtim Edich. At least he has Olam Haza, maybe. Maybe he's the tzaddik from the Rambam, right? At least he has Olam Haza. But the Rishuam is Rishuam. Tshuva is fand ich al kanle Kim Rishuam, mish v'da Chatuim ba das tzaddik, mehr psa tatros on that. Rishuam gar nicht mishpat b'chlal. But the Chatuim gan yon mishpat, and they're the bainim that we have to make sure that soll nicht verloren werden. Es stimmt nicht, he has the psatatch in the end of the pusik. Alker Shum Shum. She dies am derech tzadikim. Derech Shum Toivat. Yeah, so it doesn't say derech Chatuim Toivat. Verstehst? Chatuim ba das tzadikim. Ich bin gesagt, wie sie attached ist. Whatever. The idea is that the Shum, they're nechtum lamis. And the Chatuim, at least it's ein Stein dort. So wegen dem haben wir unsere Shuna. And you should at least to me Medeirech Holchem Matoiris Hashem, which is similar, connects, reminds us also of the Pusik Asher Yemei Desriu Hashem Ba'or Paneuchi Aleichen. So they are Holchem Matoiris Hashem. So they follow the Uras HaTorah. They get inspired, and their people have to have and Fiza Inyam Mefirsim B'Yisrael. Everyone knows about this. And Mefirsim is also another code, Rambam code for things that are not really true, right? Asher Yemei Desriu. Okay. So now he says, what's trio? Trio means a lot of noise. He stands that trio means noise. The Shoirish trio. It's the pshat. Like Bismirias Nariyo Lowy, this you have in your thing. Koilu Amberaya. You see that Hari doesn't mean dafka with a shofar. It's very interesting because I keep on trying to figure this out. This has Yom Trio Yelechem. It doesn't say you should blow with a shofar. It's just a medrash that's a shofar from Yovel. The Kruam belows nicht kein shofar. Ah, so halt noch Trio meint making noise, whatever. So what do? They say they daven just. So where do we get talk that day of the shofar? Well, because of his ger shuvat, yeah, in other places. That's interesting. No, it's interesting because
I think that's just
why do we?
Somebody that says no, that was about tefillin. No.
Why do we call it Tkiyas shofar, not Teriyas shofar? The Torah says only Teriyah. When we have to limit the Tkiyah from now, that's not Hilchas Teriyas shofar. I know it's in the Rambam. He starts.
They don't call it the Rishon either.
Yem Trio. Side. Okay.
Yeah, but yeah.
I hear. Okay, and then it says if it goes out of the kli, then it's Trio. Main push it. It's Tkiyu. Okay, this is the Vitach. Fine. And then he says that this koiles there could be Tkiyas l'simcha, there could be le'ilula, right? Like B'chatzoytris is really Tkiyas simcha, right? He wants to get to that the Lula is Lechiva, Lo'ira Lechiva, because that's his Mekar, like to connect the Pshat, that that the pshat atkiya is to break your heart. It's not lesimcha. Hagam yashla, and I don't know why the three is more that. Maybe because tkiya would be more the simcha. The three, weiß nicht. Okay, and then this is the Zohar says this 1,000 times. Yoda trio doesn't mean it's also based on that medrash, but the medrash doesn't. There's a psikta that says something similar. That Yoda trio was the größte Yoda trio. Ja, nicht dass man kann blusen kann jeder eine. Und auch nicht, and they said, lo yomal hilches Yedias hilches trio. So, also nicht so viel alochas hilches schäufe, it's only a few alochas, everyone can know it. And the mais, the meint, ha-yodim lechavim ha-mevikash ha-mitzvahs trio, right? Shaloi tzalei mesh-yodim la-ria v'lehor al-vovus la'avad Hashem bez-miras v'shvochem. So first, maybe Ashrem Yodas trio means not only the shuna, interesting. Stam, they know how to do the kavunas ha-trio, lo-yor al-vovus la'avad Hashem bez-miras. Ja, and Messiah, so in the end of the Tehillim, it talks about it, that Liebe zählt that trio. And Adem heißt this Rishon Yom trio, well, it says the Yoda trio, right? Yom Yoda trio, that's really a touch of Yom trio. Yom is Aseres, al Yidai trio. As steht nicht net teure, and then this is right, this shtickle that says, it's, that, so steht, ja, we could, he says, v'tzimach al teure shbal peshi, ik v'habir oder nicht, amar Yom trio, hik ili oma Yom ura ala tshiva. Yom trio literally means Yom tshiva. That's his touch. Based on the Rambam, but Alt Yom Zikurin, so the first step of this is true, and in other words, I think that it's correct, Pshat, because what is the Yom Triyu Lechem was the touch, and it says another time it says Zichron Triyu Lechem, right? And at least we have to read it as Triyu Lezikurin. That seems to be what it means. Not the medrash of a Zichron Triyu of Malcha of Shabbos is not a drash, but the Pshitish Lamekro is Triyu Lezikurin. And how do we know this is true? Because in Parshas Balois it says a pusik. Iskate mechat it says v'yem zim chaschem b'oif mechluli v'hoi lechem lezikurin v'arois, and the whole two psikim, right? In other words, we see that this is a way to remind God. Lezikurin is another way of saying tefillah, really. Zikurin lehazkir, right? So this is gerecht, this is emes, as the shoife from Rishon al-pi pshat, Yom Triyu lechem, if we remember the other psikim about Triyu, and Zikurin means v'niskartem lefnei Hashem. So the Yom Shuna is, Yom Triyu is just a very short way of saying Yom hiskartem lefnei Hashem. And then he takes it one more step further. Nimmt sich at Triya maskeres masani, hi asibash Hashem zechrani mashiani. So how does God get reminded? Exactly. Right, so Yom Triyu means the Yom Askuras Hashem, but Yom Askuras Hashem means was meint Bechlal the Eibshlons the Mannen. He's going to say in the next shtickle, in the next Drusha, as it talks beferish about Korea's Bes and Kurev, that it can't mean Kipshita. It means the Eibshte gedenkt is al dash when it shows up Tshuva. So that's really also the Rambam. The Rambam knew that Yom Triyu means really Lahaskuras Hashem, and he made it mean Iri Yishayna Mishnaschem. And I keep on saying this, but here you see someone there doing it openly. And then he has another shtickle diik, and this is also a good diik on Pipshat, that the next shtickle it says over the ach be'usay al-chodesh v'yazayim. Always these achs have to have something like, I'm not sure how to lemidem always of the ach be'usay, right? But of Pipshat, this has something to do, according to him. That's how he reads it. If you'll have Yom Triyu, then you'll have ach be'usay Yom HaKapirim. So there's a connection from these two, and that's where we got the idea from Aseres Tshuva. As Tshuva team finish Shuna B'Yom Kippur, then you'll have Kippur. So again, he's turning over the Kippur of Yom Kippurim to be focused on the Tshuva. Kippur is al Yidayat Tshuva, nicht Bestam. And then otherwise, he mamish takes this literally. Yom Triyu what nicht gemeint Yom Tshuva, then was kommt dran bei Yom Kippurim do? Not with Yom Kippurim, everyone agrees, has something to do with a virus, right? But was they ach really connect? He seems to read that ach is connecting it to the Rosh Hashanah. So the connection is this, okay. Jetzt, was steht, wie ist Amrish, was man der Scheukeln als Chies, in other words, that's the Gemurah of Rabbis Krispedui, really, right? It doesn't say Scheukeln, it says Tzadikim, which we assume to mean Scheukeln. It doesn't say the Vukshul for the Shuna steht in the Gemurah. Hast du a Vukshul? Was nicht aus für alle Kinder mit the pictures in the Vukshul? No, where do we get this from? It says here, but where does it come? Mazul is before Savitzir, but where do we get this from? The Vukshul. He already quotes it. Du bist am Medrisch, was der Mann, they must know from even Psikta, I think. They put in the Ures, I saw in the Ures on the Miri.
Even the Shishun, and that's what Shishun do did?
So Kim, let's well, again, we'll get to that. I have to talk about the man, make another whole shit about the Mazel, but he says, this was Shoiklem. Of course, Shoiklem might not Skripshit. It's a Mushla. So there's Pelis and Mois the Mishpat Lashem. So we see the Mishla already uses this Mushla. Doesn't mean that God has a Vukshul. It's a Mushla Sogan as whatever, it's a Dikim Banisham. And then here he start talking about why Tishra. He says, Azoi, Vos Tishra, Lefi yoyse b'mazal maznaim, and nusam b'shemaim nimshla l'uretz. Lefi kach nivchar azman hazeh. So this is a very weird thing, because die große Rambam ist, mit dem obst astrologer, gewoon, let's know, was geht da vor. The Miri also breaks, and the Miri quotes this from the Ben Ezra. Now, I didn't find, they didn't find it. The Ben Ezra looked ya epis in Parshas Emma, by Arashuna, he says something with the Mazulis. So maybe his Smeram is...
He's the Ganzen, but Benel, and Ganzen,
Yeah? Where? So we'll have to find that. In Parshas Emma? Probably. Okay, so we have to talk about this. So, I think that what he says... so this is he says the thing with the Mazal Maznaim. We'll have to look in Abba Benel and other places. There is a Medrash that makes a connection, but I think that the Medrash that he quotes, someone in the bottom quoted the Medrash. I think that it's he doesn't mean Kepshita that the Mazulis was mine. This is Tam. It's a good time. In other words, we were looking to tell the kids the story of the Maznaim was the Vegeta virus, and you see a Maznaim and Himmel. So when could be the better time to make this? I think that's how you have to read him, and maybe even that Medrash. Nicht Pshat. In other words, the Ibn Ezra means it seriously because the Ibn Ezra gleibt in astrology. So the Ibn Ezra sagt, verwusst tak der schöne Wege bitte, and he's in the, if you look in the Ibn Ezra Parshas Emel, after look at it, it's hard to figure out exactly. He's busy arguing with the Keruim tak that don't agree with Rosh Hashanah being Tishra, and he says astrology mechiach.
Who said that?
The Ibn Ezra. If you look in the Ibn Ezra, find it. In Parshas Emel over there in Rosh Hashanah, sagt the Ibn Ezra, what's the pshat of this Achbu Usai? I don't know. You look at the by the way, it's also in the Ramban. We have to look in the Ramban. So the Ramban also brings it over there. So I'm sure we could look here. We'll see. He says the idea that first the Ramban's bariches, right? That it's all Mesoira, it's Kabula, it's Shteitnish. He does say this thing that I just told you about the Zechkuren that says. I think this person also read the Ramban, right? Again, of the Ramban. Kapunem. We have to bring this Ramban. Well, again, the father Ramban.
Maybe at the same time. No.
I don't know. I saw him saying a lot of similar things as the Ramban. No, but it was.
From him. I also see it.
Okay, no,
it's like the words of the Ramban.
Which? Right, this shtickler Ramban that everyone knows in Parshas Emma, where it says that it's mamish the same idea. So maybe the Ramban, we have to check. Okay, we're gonna have to check who was first. Who was first? Yeah. But by the way, the Ramban. Okay, we'll have to get to the Ramban's shit.
No, maybe they think alike. I mean, it's
the Ramban says that does talk about this that I called clear. Okay, but it's already mixed around Kabul, and also says this Remes b'Shemaim. It's not clear what the Ramban understands, but how does he understand the connection to this man? Does he understand that just because of this time, that's stuck a while, there's a psainian in this man? The Ramban is so frustrating, he never tells us what he thinks. Kapunim,
I think he lets you think.
I think he just doesn't want to tell you what he thinks. Yeah,
I don't think so. He's very open. He explains all his students.
And then he says, this is a sphere, okay, what's the... Okay, now I want to show you the Ibn Ezra over here. Taka says something. Ibn Ezra, wie ist das? Yeah, it's a ganz lange. Omne Amatikem. En mizlach usoide, sim lib chul tavinem. So sagt Ibn Ezra. Omne Amatikem, Shem Rashuna Yemadid. V'tam triyu zayich lemalchis Hashem. V'ach ha'sheik kodesh chodesh, chodesh nissen nechbot. V'an das b'shiva b'avim ha'ribbe, I don't know what meribbe is. And v'nech mish us l'noichach. Doesn't say anything about the Mazulis here. He does say whatever that's supposed to mean. No, that's about why it's the 10th day. But he doesn't say the thing of the Maznaim here. I don't see it. We'll have to look if someone has good notes on the Ramban, should quote Mekoiris for this Maznaim situation. I'm not sure. He's trying to talk about this, but I don't see them saying this. He has a rai from the Mazulis why the Shuna is really the Shuna. I don't understand it. Meribes and Sachen, that's auf Beshem Din usles anes bei. Wenn wir kapieren, ich weiß nicht. Not sure what's going on here. Okay, Bekitze. So that's his touch over here. Soon you'll see he has a more rationalist pshat. That's Farani in Yezeh, Ma'ari Shani Marav Rabbanim, Bekitze, he brings this thing, and he brings the Modern Feich, which is similar to this. So, so apparently some people disagreed with this Rambam about the Kisha. Die weiß von einer, was denkt sich? You see where he brings the Rambam?
I have this one.
He said there's some Ktsas Chachmaini was halt as the Rambam is modern. Why and why? Because some Alef gewonnen some mitzvahs. We got Mechikelim. You see soon he's busy with this Gemura of Lama Matiki, because I think that's their diet. Because it says Lama Toigen Chmuna Matiki is the Charai gegen the Rambam. I was looking at the Gemura Lama Toigen Iri Shaina Mishnas. Even Teretz of the Gemura has no shaykhs with the Rambam's thoughts. Laval Vasasuten, whatever that means. Right? And then he says another thing, Achina Lag, the Goyim Lachen of in the Triya. Did you know about that? That the Goyim Lachen of the Kiyashaife? These people are very worried about what the Christians think. Even the Meiri wrote a whole side. I didn't have. Yeah.
Why Christians? I mean,
Efter the Muslimen auch. Ich weiß nicht,
why? It's like leiblich in mitzvahs, no? I mean, so what?
I don't know. They bring also the Meiri keep on saying that the Goyim lachen auf uns, because that the Kili we do things with, or the Christians lachen auf mitzvah, of course. They say that they get the spirit, the Riech, spirit of the law. This is Paul's Chiddush. And the Meiri says in the Zakdum of Schibrat Shiva that he wrote the whole cipher because the Goyim lach zogen as Yidden namnish kampnimi as a stam. And he thinks it's just because there's no book about Shiva, so I'll write the book and show you that we do care about repentance. It also was Christians are very into repentance, right? Epis guide the foot. And of course he brings this Pusik Chachmas. I remember that the Rambam was very concerned about this Pusik. So, okay. And then he says like this. He says a very nice shtickle Torah. I think that is this next shtickle is a very beautiful shtickle Torah that he has. He says, if the people now he's hacking on these lamdim with Alenish Karama, they only learn Gemura and they say that the Rambam is going against the Gemura. He says that Shishreif has Remes and it's a mitzvah, it's a din, like everything else. And he says if they would learn if you would have learned a bissel Mishnah, was to say that's shtissim. Because the Mishnah says like this, and his diak in the Mishnah is, I always thought that it's pshat in the Mishnah, and I found that he says it also like me, but right? Remember the Mishnah Rashuna says, says and the Mishnah literally makes this into a medrash. I know that the Gemara has a whole shtickle Torah about this, right? Mitzvah Srichs Kavon, which signs there's Kavon called the Kaya Lashir, and the Chavan Lutzes, Loy Kivan Lutzes, but the next Mishnah says like this, Voy Kashur Moshe Yudu Go Yisrael, Chidosh Moshe, and then there's a Mishnah about Nachash Nachoshes. So these two Mishnahs, it comes from the Mechilt already in Parshas B'Shalach. And the Mishnah literally made a bridge from the Kivan Liboy to the Kivan Liboy from Mesham Liboy Levim Shishmaim. I mentioned hunting, I mentioned this, right? And in other words, what could the Mishnah be saying if not that the Tkiyas Shofar is not, how does the Tkiyas Shofar help? Not by some magic, but by Zekiv and Libo. In other words, by doing Tshuva. Like, it doesn't literally say doing Tshuva in the Mishnah. It says, M'chavn Libo Levein Sheshamayim. But Lamas, the Mishnah is already seems to be doing, let's be real. We keep on blaming the Rambam for turning over this thing of reminding God to reminding us, but the Mishnah is doing it. The Tanum already did this. I think that the pshat of this Mishnah is Yudav Shal Moshe Avi pshat. What do you learn? You learn I wish that Moshe is a spal. Ich weiß es as Gilles the Kabula pi Kabula, and the Gemara says no. Yudav Shal Moshe macht anaf minutes. All a way to get you to do tshuva or whatever exactly lechavnas libin lavin sheshma means l'shabdas libam. I think it says. Same thing with the Nachash and Nachosh. It's the mamish as Gilles Lushan life na Lushan. So right, the Nachash and Nachosh. The Ramban already has all pshat, and the Gemara says no. It does not all these Gilles. The Mishnah. It's just a way to get you to look up. Mamish Pirim, the pshat. It's mamish the most radical Rambam pshat you could think of. Was it the most like it's a big up sign. That's all it is. It's an arrow. Gets you to look up. The sky. Epis. Pirim pshat. The Mechilta actually continues to talk about the sim that they made in Mitzrayim. And then it says Elu. The Schisa Mitzvah is matzel. That's the Rasha brings it like this even. They continue the same theme. This is mamish Rambamism Sheba Mishnah. I think unless you have another pshat. But the more interesting. Yeah, that's only okay. Kids, now it's working. Kids, what was I saying? No, the mile days. So this stick was the mission. Look, mamish, aber mystische Pshat. And Nachash is just a way to get you to look up, mamish. Mile. But this connection of the two Mishnah is even a bigger chiddush. Because you would, every lamb they ask, Kavuna, mitzvah Kavuna, you would say, is that, yeah, man darf von Sinn Tina Voit Hashem. Mitzvah Kavuna is just, the Gemara says this. It doesn't mean that. It just means, Lafike to Kaila she is, Machavan Loitz, it's like, even so, and the Pesach Tshuva says that he's not only one, that mitzvah Kavuna, not Machavan Yoitza. So if you mean Machavan Kavuna is like Kabula, you're not being Machavan to be Yoitza, so maybe you should, the Chaps, I mean, Krem Kaida Kenzan. And I'm spielen, I'm like, Kritz von dem was the ganze Loot, Kavuna Loot ist das. No, of course not. Steht nicht. The Gemara says, how do you not mechaven? By being the Kaya Lashir. Ich weiß nicht. Steht nicht. By forgetting that you're being Mechayim Mitzvah. Of course, that's what it means.
But it's whatever you're doing it.
Even
that, so that's good enough.
Exactly. No, it's a clue. You don't have to get to this. You don't have to get. It's not about Hesech Hadas. Ich kann Ihnen von.
Yeah, of course not. Yeah. What your intention?
That's how people shut Gemur. And of course, the guy's Nashil. The only question of you look in the Mishnah. If you go outside this medrash, dreist in the gas, then it starts a question. The Gemeinde here show. For this time get a noise. But if you're in this medrash, habt schon the Schale. It's push it. But Akapunim, what the Achroim that think that Mamish have to meditation and we forget the Kavonim and it doesn't make sense. I'm asked now, was ich came to sagen, is ja, right? Ich came to sagen, that's a Pipshat, that's a Pialocha. But now you see the Mishnah already. Did see a connection between this and between the Chav and Libelavim Shoshamayim. As Kavuna meant, yeah, exactly, right. Or at least what the people are saying, literally are saying that Tshuva is the real Kavuna. If you don't do Tshuva, you're not Yoitze. Ashrei made it true means Ashrei Yom Sha'oizim Tshuva. And the Zohar seems to say this. That's what the Zohar says. And you can't, the Zohar literally says that if you hear Shaiva from someone that doesn't know the Kavunas, come with Arbet. Yeah. And the Loike Pesach Tshuva, so these lights him. And Kapunim, it's not him, there's other people that like Litvikers, like say, I saw the slide of this, Kivam, Machavan Kavunas, and as Machavan Lutz's father, but noch, I don't want my life. So funny. Yeah, Agapunem, and they zog the shine. So what should I tell you? The Kitzer is as says Klur as from the Mishnah. You see the Mishnah did see the connection. It's not only this; it's also the Gemara and Durim over there by Chile Gas as a Sadiq Melch Mabash Mikosh. Also see that there's Enochanami like Oichel Chile Gas says. The Reddit Toys says this might not Chile Gas for him Kippe was my guest name Kippe auch because then was berettig and Shazingat and Schmach kan Weikes it was a bisschen grob gegessen the Problem by that's what the Mishnah the Sabrais over in Durham I think that's what it's about. So you see already in the Gemara did understand that there's a connection between Kavuna Mitzvahs Kavuna and the Indian fan doing mitzvahs with the Tam or with the Pneumius however you understand it exactly. Maybe it's like only a very kavuna clueless. You could say that maybe you could learn from the Mishnah that it's my taknish kan kavuna studies. That just means lechav and lutzes or shemarti v'naser etzoni, something very basic because that seems to be what I think. Right? I don't say that the dam of the mashkev is magen valses besakten the clippers was it says because it's tina mitzvah. Could be that that's taka the whole kavuna of Hashem according to Chazal to do the mitzvah. So it's not a stira these two things. You understand what I'm saying? Could be that lechav and limas shmel literally means ich mitzvah, ich die mitzvah, it's gefolg. Maybe the Folgen is all there is. So that could be. So that's at least I see. I enjoy that he brings this diak from the Smichas HaMishnah. It's not a diak. It's a push. The Mishnah Haktaran Stam and Drushim. I'm sure the Mishnah Mishnah someone says this already or after. Okay, and then he brings the Gemara. The Gemara also says this. Right, the Ma'amar of Rebbe Akiva. He's interested that it's Rebbe Akiva. Rebbe Akiva gesagt, in the Ma'amar Teure Pesach Aseres, right? And if immer before Malchus Chron Shafres, but schon Malchus Tachlin, ja. And it says that there's a reason, right? So we see from this Bereich, from this Rebbe Akiva, and he says after this is Rebbe Akiva, was nicht nes b'shulem Hitzu v'shulem. In other words, weiß, wie es in nitzen Time mitzvahs, and nicht werden kein Schleim HaMelech. That's how his touch.
What?
His touch seems to be that what's nicht b'shulem Hitzu v'shulem. Part this is the Time mitzvahs, so the Rambam. And Rebbe Akiva knew the Time mitzvahs, and he didn't become a Apekoyer, was didn't do the mitzvahs. So Hitzu v'shulem. And then there's this Gemura of Lama Talkin Marim, yeah? His organization is nicht right, and then the Gemara sagt, Lamatoiken, ja, schwer. So von dem Gemara wollte ich gewähne Adiek that we shouldn't look for the time. So this is the Chans kenne ich nicht an, because there's a different Gemara that says that the Gemara bim Galatek Yoim and Tame Teure, So we see that the Chum do need a tam. And then he brings another very nice raya that we do need a tam. Yeshli lachker al raya, but it's a very nice raya. Chapushik meferish. Jo, ik ken mir leichen van eigen, maar wat dat is leggen. We maken ze wel pesig, right? Ik is ook genoeg alleen maar zo is. Was dan van niet zo loy, gesagt es akusiv. Was soll für dich Kasche, dann habe ich dit mit so kan tam. Seit man gaat nach fragen, if sie mit das never tam, you ask. Gaan we chapusik.
Right. Yeah, that's very wow.
Very nice raya.
No, yeah, it's very nice raya. I was over this. I would say I always brought the raya. That's that kijk, me zegt tak van de keshoch van de teretz. Got to binnenkop. You see that mitzvahs have reasons,
It's not clear what their teretz is. It could be that the teretz is like it says in voice Chana, weil Tzavanya Shem Las Kol Achik Mal Tov Lu Nikol Yem Nechai Sana Kem that the Gudish Paisach stops before the end of the parsha. He seems to answer teretz. We talk about the Paisach. He seems to say the teretz is avodah mini. But really, that doesn't seem to say that. It says then Mefimitzayim or Meshibet to God, and therefore we have to do whatever He says. And then going to get schar v'oinish. So yesh la'ayin, see the raya is a raya as mitzvah, someone prutis the tam. Could be again that the tam is just by tzavani Hashem lases.
Why put Anatoli? Yeah.
You understand? Also, the first part, yeah.
But no, right. Bring to that kif in the kasha. That's very interesting.
But the kasha is not so schwer because the ingle maybe I hear it's a good raya, but yes, we can quetschen I will. We could make it mean whatever we want. Maybe that's a teretz. He wants the teretz to be no. The teretz is the Shabbat is Alev. That's his real teretz. Now, otherwise, he will call me yoitze because just like you see by Mitzrayim, like the Bach kind of way of thinking, right? If you don't remember it, you're not Shabbat is Alev. You're not doing tefillin. You're doing just the action, but you're not doing what it's for, right? And then he says, "Neizim zuv ba'ascha isha yufa." Is an ism of afchaze. You're doing the mitzvah, but you're not. I don't know exactly the medrash. So that's the idea. And then he talks about the tamia mitzvahs. Okay, that the plutim don't have a tam. Maybe that's what the Gemara means. And then he says, I'm skipping around a little. So then he says, "Bekitze the tam." He has all told about the students Hashem lekayim nigus lunin v'nayni. When the Gemara says lamatoik, it means don't stop to blow because you don't know the tam. But it doesn't mean that it isn't really a tam. And now he has a very nice pshat. I'll tell you his pshat because I have to finish. Bekitze. The pshat is like this. The Gemara has this very funny shtickling Gemara, right? Lamatay again. If I was 2 times, what is this exactly going on? Why the second time is mevalbas asuten? Doesn't say in the Gemara. That's the older Shem have their own fantasies. Shoot him why, right? Because he thought and all kind of toilets so mevalbas asuten. Chib v'samitzvus. What is the if it's a chiv of mitzvah then what? What shaykhs mevalbas asuten? You could say it for the first time already. What's going on? So he says, I think his pshat is a very nice pshat. His pshat is basically like this: that we blow the kiss the miyashe, whatever. Blowing is just blowing. Bluesen. What's happening from bluesen? Suten, what means Suten? Of course, there's no Suten. He has in the next Rush, he has 5 pages about this, that the Suten doesn't exist. Everything he exists is Meshige. So you think as Suten. Suten is other starting what he's Suten, he it's harder. So of course, these Rambam, the Rambam already did this very, very fetish and Chalagim and talks about the Suten. They misread this, Shtikla Gemura, of course. Because the Gemura doesn't mean it in their way. They mean Ein Suten Eli Etzahara. That's how the Rambam is Chassidim read this Shtikl. When we say Suten, it's a mushtel for the Choymer. Oh, there's also ein Yitzchok, right? Only means the Chaymer that has an inclination to make you make mistakes. That's what Suten means. And that's the Rambam's pshat and everything. Marich a lot about the Nochash of the Atzadas and so on. Okay. So Suten meant, gets a Yitzchok. Of course, he Suten Yitzchok doesn't mean that, because he Suten means the same being is the Suten and the Yitzchok somehow. Just the opposite. The Yitzchok is a Suten, not the Suten is the Yitzchok. But okay, just so you remember that. Don't forget how to read, right? He Suten Yitzchak doesn't mean that the Suten is the Yitzchak, right? Especially if you don't even believe the Yitzchak exists. That's the shit that's Rambam and Chassidov. Suten means the Yitzchak. So in other words, when we say Levalbas Suten, or that's Meferish the Gemara saying that the whole reason why below Shaifer is so we should be Mizgabra Lachoymer and become better people, right? Now, what's this 2 times? It's very pushy. It's very geschmack. Because the first time, which is below Shaifer, so maybe there's one Yid that knows the Kavuna is Yiri Shaina Mishnaschem. But since you didn't understand, okay. The since you didn't understand. So we have to explain it to you. How do we explain it to you? We wrote 3 long bruches, Malchus, Acharon, Shafres. We talk about, basically, according to them, how you have to do Tshuva. The law doesn't say Malchus, Acharon, Shafres, how to do Tshuva. Already remember that they already retranslated Zacharonis to mean doing Tshuva. So Malchus, we can understand. Remember that there's a God. Remember that you have to do Tshuva and so on. There's all ways to get you to do Tshuva. And this is a hezbollah on how the shofar is going to make you do Tshuva, and that's Bimeval Blasasut. In other words, make you do Tshuva. It's very nice pshat if you remember that the second one is Malchus Chanas Shafres, and that's really like making explicit what the shofar really means. When you just blew, he didn't know. I think that's what he's saying. Maybe he's not saying it, but shat. So this is the. And then he has a lot of Torah. Why there's 3 Tekiyo, because there's 3 different parts of Tshuva. Shat. Torahs. He says, he doesn't mamish say what I made a little better than him, but I think that's very good pshat lamas.
What else does it mean? What else could it mean?
Yeah, okay, but so what's the first one? The first, his touch is for this was right. Then his touch on Lama Toikin is just like the Gemara is mad that he shouldn't say such a language. If he would say where does it say it? Somewhere here he says a little before Lama Toikin loy buil plashoitz lashlusa belamo. Why don't you say ma yesh lachavim betki? Then the Gemara would be happy. Lama Toikin kilya nish was nicht getin. No, of course tin darf man. But then you have to know what to do it. That's that seems to be his pshat. Okay. It's very long, but it's very nice pshutim. The guy to the ganze Sach, yeah. And then he talks about also another interesting thing. Yeah, that's what I was saying. The mal of these people over the Rambam himself, that they go through it. Gets it, and then he has a touch. Kiyush for the trio is Kabul al Usted, and they say yes, okay. And then he has a interesting thing about the Kiyu is Genichi Lulil, and he's worried. What's the pshat? Yeah, he thinks that this is another diet that has to be about doing Tshuva, because we see, so even in the Pusik already, Alto of Ezra, and in the Gemara that says you don't say Malchus Achron Shav Shal Perunius, although the Perunius might be good, like Biat Chazok Emlech Aleichem, because Rashunas, that's how he understands it at least, because Sayim Simcha. But in Kalzeh, we do Genichi Gunach, which means that we have to be sad that you did a virus. I think that this is the Mekar for the Arizal, not the Mekar, that you shouldn't say Vidi Rashuna only b'shaz at Tekiyas. He makes like Zayayotz, same idea. Makes Zayayotz min HaKlal, V'etzim Rashuna Zayamtev, but Chivat in Dafen, so by the Tekiyas, that is, you're allowed to be sad, b'shaz the Tekiyah. Besides, Chitz for them you're not allowed to be sad, that's what he says. I don't know, that's at least my association with what he says. Okay, so the Atkan Inyan, and again, the Nafkamil Nirani is that this is his very nice rereading of the whole idea of the Shoifer, the Malach Chanes Shafres, and the Din of Rishun itself is a way to make you do Tshuva, and Yom Triu Peresh Yoim Ha'uras Tshuva. Okay? So that's his how we read what it says about the Tkiyas Shoifer. Now, what about he elaborates, and I think this is the best elaboration. And then one question he had, the only connections back to our question about the time is his only little thing was about the Maznaim, maybe the Muslim Maznaim, he probably doesn't mean it literally, so that's not a real good teretz. So then he has a better teretz, and this teretz is really to answer the more general question. And this kind of thinking comes from the Kizrian earlier already. You'll see the media quotes the Kizrian on this. Which is why we have this whole thing, and it really goes back to what he says, that there's chatuim and people mezindik chabislo. So we need mipam lepam epsa shakel, and he says that he connects it to the idea that there's the refias agif and refias anefesh, and he brings up some medrash. Vayis Hashem kol choyli zal ratzarah. This was a medrash. I don't remember. He seems to quote someone. Vayis Hashem kol choyli zal yatzarah, because the yatzarah is cholia nefesh. And then he says, just like there's Refias HaGif, there's Refias HaNefesh, and he says that the side there's a very strict order. Just like in order to be healthy, you have to eat twice a day, or once a day, right? So you say Krishma twice a day. The rest of the day is just whatever, normal. And then twice a day you do Tshuva, basically. You say Krishma. And just like there's Refi, you need sometimes to rest. He's making this all a mushal for Refias HaNefesh. There's Shabbos, which is Lesanik Boy al Hashem B'Yedias Drucha V'Tech HaShvisa V'Pnai. That's his touch in Shabbos. And just like there's some things that you have to do 3 times a year, Hakuza, according to him. So there's 3 Trigulim. And some people need more, so there's a Shchudush, very interesting. So 2 mention was that from Yeda Chodesh, Shtik Hakuza. They mentioned that from Chit and Ochresh Chodesh. These people then, the Riutzat, there's a lot of levels of this. And then just like every year, that from an asparagus, whatever that means, They had an idea that once a year you should make some sort of cleaning asparagus. Asparagus meant asparagus. Man trinkt I think it's a mashkos. Man trinkt and it makes you shilshel, weiß was, and geht out. Also it's Yom Kippur is to clean you of all the schmutz von a ganz Jahr. And when we clean this, the Kizri has a very similar structure. Right. You'll see they talk, the Miri quotes, I think he read the Kizri. And then the Roife give the mensch a mashka, putek, before you drink this asparagus you have to eat. So that's Aseres Machiva, which is before Yom Kippur. And it's 10 Keneged Aseres Rekiem, meaning 10 Galgalim, whatever, however you count. And there's also 10 Psikim Shalish Chodesh. I don't know what he's talking about. Asira Brucha Shalish Chodesh, there's 10 Psikim. I think he means Kriyas HaTorah of Rish Chodesh. The Gemara says in Megillah something about 10 Psikim, right? 9 Psikim, really, right? There's 10 Psikim Rish Chodesh because there's one more Pusik. Remember, there's a Gemara in Megillah that says this? Weißt du, was ich meine? One of the big sources for all kind of numerology and Judaism is the Gemara in Megillah, which talks about Keneged Roya Pnai Melech, Keneged, no? You know what I mean? And yeah, it's in the Gemara, and this is the Gemara. Shloisha Keneged Mi Keneged Roya Ksivim. 10 Psikim, Asura Keneged Mi.
What's going on?
I'm Poich to meet Psikim by the Knesset. Not Rish Chodesh, it's Bichlal Kriya. Rish Chodesh happens to be the shortest Kriya that we have, because it's only 10 Psikim Taka, so I think that's what he means. And Vaidaber Olam Amin. Hani Asura Keneged Mir, Shim Elai said Asura Batlunish by the Knesset. Vers 5 Keneged Yaseres Adibris. Vlai 5 Keneged Asura Lilem, Rechnum Stay Asura Amuris. And then there's the shtick about that. The Pardes in his thing about proving that Chazal knew about Esesfiras uses this is his Gemara, one of the Gemaras. So this is the 10. So this is also Aseres Shmait Shiva. Okay. That's ready for Kabula if you want to. But this is only answering why it's 10. So 10 is like a whole good number. It's a whole number. And then he has another thing. So why ping this time? So first we have this Mefersem. It's Mekibul that Rishuna was Yom Tchilas Maseichu. Since Udum Rishna gezinnikt and the Tshuva. So we remember that we have to do Tshuva. Okay? That's one pshat. So basically what we have is like this. We have this, and explaining that Rishon is only about Shiva, and then we have why Rosh Hashanah. So we have this one pshat in Maznaim. The second thing is that we need once a year. That's a general reason. And third, so that's not Shnegai. The second truth is the reason is because there's Briyas Udam Rosh Hashanah, which is some kind of connection. Because the Udam this is a medrash. The Udam Zayim Tchilas Masech, when it's in the Chsidra and the Gemara. And since Udam was never Rosh Hashanah, I didn't bring it there. Therefore, he had the Tshuva, so this is the connection. And then, again, this Torah is about Erev Vasutin again. Then there's another thing which he says, which is about somewhere he says Asura Yimashi Sairish Nas Chama Shasam. This is also something the media says it also, but I have to find where it's earlier. That the Rosh Hashanah, it's basically the beginning of the year, because and the Sten Yemei Tshuva just because the Shmas Chama is a little longer than the Shnas Levunas. Okay, the same Shnas Chama is B'Yom Kippurim. The Grua talks about this kind of Torah that you see that's much earlier than him. It's 11 days, so 10, really 10 and a half, so that's the Pshetel. So somehow, the Rai is that Yom Kippur, Rishon is Yom Kippur. So we see that there's like 10 days, there's 10 days of Rishon, you understand? So, but this is all going back to the idea of Udam Rishon being born at Rosh Hashanah, right? He has a lot of more nice Torahs over here. Then he talks about the Semunim. I want to get back. He has one more pshat. Okay, talks about the Semunim. He says very nicely that Rishon is after essen. So you can't forget that you have to do Tshuva. So that's why he makes Semunim, that when you eat, you shouldn't forget to do Tshuva. And then he talks about the Kol Oichel B'Tshiv, because it doesn't really matter. It's all just a way to get you to do Tshuva. So that's also a nice pshat, although I don't know if it's what it means. Kol Oichel B'Tshiv. In other words, the mindset of the Tanis Tetepes, the Tshuva Tetepes. Essen is auch dasselbe if it would work. It's not. And the Kitzer in the end, says another pshat. I don't see it. He had another pshat in the end somewhere, which is about. How come I don't see it here? Maybe it's in the next things. It's in the next drusha. It says that these Yemei Tshuva are because it's Mana Usif, and the mensch hat sich viel balgave is going to be too much for them to vehicle for shachachto. So the Yemei Tshuva is connected to sickness, understand? Because it's the time that you would have been Zman Avayra, so we turned it into Zman Tshuva. This is the most rational pshat that you could find for Tshuva being in Chodesh Tishra. I'm going to have to stop here because I have to go. But Bekitze, in the next drusha, you take it, you see it. And the next... In the next drush, he has a very nice arichas about Kareib, Yosef Kurev, that it can't mean Kapshita. Smizgan Faket, echt. Very, very funny that someone could like Mamash go and say, Pink Faket from the Gemara. He says, he mentions the Gemara, I don't know what he says. Epizukte. Ja, ich weiß tak, as the Gemara sagt anders. I don't think, I'm not sure what he's trying to say. Mamash, not sure what he's trying to say when he mentions the Gemara, and he says, yeah, the Gemara sagt anders, but is not sure. About something. Maybe you understand.
Well,
okay.
yeah, very good.
Yeah, he gives a mamash a Rambam as pshat for the whole Rishonim, Kippur, and everything. The main thing is that he doesn't think at all that something real happens on Aseres Tshuva. But and if you want to know how to explain everything in that way, so this is the how. That's really what we... Hayotz Lunim is from the ganze...